We're in for a treat. We are in for a treat. Hello, JLR Investigates in the house. We are in for a treat tonight. We got a doctor coming in the house. We're going to talk a little bit about the mind, possibly the mind of Carlee Russell. Why did Carlee Russell behave the way she did? What was going on in her head? Behaviors. So I got a guest coming on. She's a personal friend of mine. Her name is Dr. Amy. And she got quite a resume. I want to read this resume before I bring her into the show. Dr. Amy Salerno is a board-certified family medicine physician with an extensive expertise in mental health issues across all life stages. Amy graduated from Duke University and the University of South Carolina School of Medicine. She is a fellowship trained in both in mental health of children and integrated. These words are very, very. I'm not into the medical field, but she has. It's medical psychology in a sense, and she'll explain more. Amy's approach treats the entire person. This includes nutrition, supplements, exercise, self-care, self-hygiene, and medicine. She specializes in our specialties include anxiety, depression, ADHD, PTSD, autism, adoption-related issues, and medicine management. In addition, Dr. Salerno conducts immigration and court-ordered psychiatric evaluations. Amy's YouTube channel, Dre Latina, she got a great channel, is one of her hobbies. It is an important way for her to connect with people all across the world. Fellow armchair sleuths cover recent true crime cases. Dr. Salerno offers insight into the medical and psychological factors which can lead to criminal behavior. She also discusses topics like PTSD, addiction, mood disorders, multi-generational trauma, parenting styles, and wellness tips. It always promises to be a spirited dialogue. Yes, we're going to bring in Dr. Amy. Dr. Amy's coming in. Dr. Amy in the house. Come on in, Dr. Amy. Come on in.
Hey. Hi.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you well, and I think everyone can hear you. I just shared your impeccable resume, Dr. Amy.
I don't know about that, but okay.
Nice. So thank you for coming on. There's been people waiting in the chat. We're interested, right? And in Carlee Russell, the Carlee Russell case. And that's why I brought you on. You've been following it, correct?
Right. I have.
So, yeah, exactly. So what's your take? What's your take on Carlee Russell?
Okay, well, can I do like a little prelim intro?
Sure. Let's go.
Hi, guys. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me on. And I just want to say that I follow just a couple of true crime channels, one of which is JLR. And I'm really interested in civil constructive dialogue. And for instance, JLR and we're not going to go there tonight, but we definitely disagree on the Idaho 4 suspect. But that's okay, because part of this armchair sleuthing is to learn about the truth, but we can also speculate and get impressions and to have a, like I say, a spirited dialogue, but in a kind manner. And what I really like about you, JLR, now I'm going to talk about JLR. May I do that for a second?
Sure, go ahead.
All right, here we go. So what I really like about JLR, I guess, are three things. First of all, I like the fact that he has grown so much, not only in his channel numbers, but really more importantly, I've really been watching him over the years, growing in his personhood, in developing really like a great moral compass and a maturity that really excites me, because he's of a younger generation. So I love seeing younger generation people growing and changing. I also admire you for your courage, because you go to like boots on the ground. Very few of us in YouTube land, or really in mainstream legacy media, do that these days. You kind of do the old shoe leather, check it out, investigative journalism. And I really appreciate that, JLR, Jonathan, because I am busy with my practice. I'm launching my 2 young adult children, not really raising them, but launching them off. I have 4 pets. I'm a single parent, and I've always been a single parent. So, life is very busy for me, and I count on you and a couple of other content creators to sort of take me on your trips so that I can learn like what's going on, and like I can sort of be in your back pocket and I can learn. And so I am grateful that you invited me on here today. And I would love to give some impressions of this current case. But I also wanted to acknowledge my admiration for you.
I'm totally grateful, Dr. Amy, and I appreciate that for sure. For sure.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Yeah, and with this particular case, we're going to talk tonight a little bit about the Carlee Russell case. Because I talked to you before coming on, and I don't really get many people coming on my show like this.
No, I know that, so I'm so honored.
But I totally wanted an expert opinion about the psychology of minds and what would get someone to do this possible, in the situation in Carlee's shoes. And I know you can't legally diagnose someone,
right.
And that's what we're doing.
Yeah, we're not doing that.
No, we're not doing that.
Right.
But
I'm
sorry.
Go
ahead. I'm sorry. No, go ahead.
There's that sort of lag between airwaves, so I'm sorry that I interrupted you.
No, you're fine. Just want to try to get an understanding of what could have went through Carlee's mind to do this.
Right.
Like, what's going on? Like, in your professional opinion and seeing things around the country, and you cover true crime, have you ever seen or anything like this before?
Well, I have to be honest with you. I have been in practice for 30 years as a family practitioner and also psychiatrist, and I probably have seen it all. And so what she did, now she admits to, so we're not even going to call it allegedly, right? We're just going to say this is what she has finally been able to authentically own, so to speak. I have to be honest with you, usually I see it in like early college age kids, maybe 18, 19, 20, when they're really trying to find themselves, etc. We can talk about that. I haven't really seen so much a ruse, I call it a ruse, like a hoax, that is so well planned and executed, so to speak, although sloppy, in somebody who apparently has no previous psychiatric history or legal problems.
Yeah, so she is 25. So, she's right at that. What do they say? Your brain develops when you hit 25. Is that true?
Excellent point. For biological, I hate that we have to say biological women, but for biological females, the frontal lobe of the brain, which is, we'll talk about in a little while, which is responsible for what we call executive functioning. And this is really important when we talk about some of how she kind of planned and premeditated some stuff. The frontal lobe develops in females fully develops around the age of 25. And recent research shows that for men, it's about between 26 and 30. So it takes a little bit longer for guys to grow up.
Why is that?
Well, that's a great question. I really think it's the way the female and male brains are hardwired. We know from development that female babies do motor-wise, they crawl earlier overall. These are generalizations, but they crawl and they meet their developmental milestones, potty training and things like that, quite a bit earlier than boys do. So, it's probably just the way the differences between the brains in men and women. Now, let me tell you that the other really interesting thing, guys, is that we know in recent studies that folks with ADHD, attention deficit, or ADD, which is not, you have the attention deficit, but you don't have the hyper part. Those young people don't fully develop their frontal lobe until probably around age 28 to 30. So there is a delay with folks that have attention issues, impulsivity issues. So, and I think I really like your first question, because I think we have to first understand normal, right? And mind, normal development. And then we can talk about unusual behaviors, right?
Mm-hmm. So with his Carlee situation, right? I mean, what do you think she was thinking? Like if she was thinking at all, like who?
I can't now. Yes, let's back up, because I can imagine that this is going to be clipped and chipped, and it'll probably be all over the YouTube streets like Dr. Salerno said da, 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 da. No, I'm not diagnosing this young woman. I can't, not only legally but ethically, because I have not met her, right? I haven't done a complete psychiatric evaluation. I don't know her. And generally when I do court-ordered psychiatric evaluations for immigration or custody battles or the military, to clear people, young people to go into the military, I spend about 4 hours face-to-face with them, plus a battery of tests that I give them. And then in addition, I give them, I look at what we call their collateral documents. And for some people who've had psychiatric admission or legal problems, that can be hundreds of pages that I have to review. And from all of that, my observations, the tests that I give, the questions that I ask, and their collateral documentation, I pull all of that together, and then I make my sort of evidence-informed impressions, diagnoses, and recommendations about the person. So we're not doing that for Carlee. I will also tell you that for about 15 years, this is going back about 10 years, for 15 years, I was on emergency psychiatric call almost every other weekend for like 15 years, from Friday night to Monday morning. And so I had the challenge to evaluate children as young as 3 or 4 years, right, all the way up to folks that are in their 70s and 80s, acutely psychotic patients with mania that do sort of impulsive stuff, suicidal, self-harm, homicidal, and then to make a decision. And that usually takes me maybe an hour to 2 hours in the emergency room to make a decision whether that person meets criteria for what we call a 72-hour hold. And this is, I know I'm going really detailed, but this is what I've been thinking about the Carlee case. 72-hour hold, or something like my daughter always says 5150. I think the police use that. Have you ever heard that?
Yeah, they have it in California. I think it's a 5150. Different states have different terminologies.
Yeah. Well, sometimes when I said to my daughter like last week, listen, I have had it. You need to go pick up the poo-poo in the yard. She's like, you better be careful, Mom. Like, you're going to get a 5150. I'm like, oh, come on. So yeah, we kind of use it. But the point is it's not something that we just off the cuff make decisions about, Jonathan. And so, however, in my following of the Carlee case, whatever the police put out, right, in their pressers, I like to take that information and I like to dissect it. Okay. Not what people are saying on the streets of YouTube, and certainly not the Main Street legacy media, because their narrative is so often corporately and profit driven. So I don't know if I believe whatever, but there's a lot of information that we can glean from pressers, from police pressers.
So have you read the presser in this case?
Yes, I have.
Let's dissect. What have you been able to dissect out of these pressers that the few that the police have released in reference to this case? Okay.
So first of all, I guess I followed it from literally the minute that it was announced. And I, of course, immediately texted my two college-age daughters, because I was worried. One of them actually is a nursing student, and she was out. And I thought, oh my God, what if my kid decides that she sees a toddler on the road? So of course, my first thing is, as a parent, I immediately texted my children and I said, you guys do not get out, the whole thing. So from the beginning, I was watching all of this and I thought, based on what they presented her as, that she's, works full time, that she's a nursing student, all of, she comes from an intact, educated family. Those things are important to see. So immediately I thought, well, gosh, she looks like there's no history of doing this before. So I started to sort of gather my mental points. And the important points for me, as I said just now, is that, she's an educated young lady from an intact family. She has a full-time responsible job. She's apparently in nursing school, has a boyfriend. So all of these things, I'm thinking, wow, she appears to be a really stable person. Of course, these are appearances and these are impressions. At the presser, they've done, I think, 2, right, Jonathan? Or is that right?
I think 2, yeah.
Yeah. At the first presser, I was struck by the fact that regardless of why, how, and where she went and why she did it, she did arrive home, and she was then taken by EMS, which is emergency medical, services, the ambulance. She apparently, according to the police, was taken by EMS to be evaluated in, the hospital, right, at UAB. And what they said, and what I read in several articles, is that she was, quote, this is important, guys, she's evaluated and released.
Yeah.
So as a psychiatrist, and that I have evaluated hundreds, if not 1,000 people in an emergency room setting, for me, right away, I was like, oh, if that's true, and they're not covering for her privacy, because some people say, well, for HIPAA reasons, they wouldn't say. I'm like, no, they can say if the person was admitted to hospital, that's not a breach of HIPAA. But the fact that they released her, for me, I, from a psychiatric perspective, immediately thought, okay, she must not have qualified for an emergency 72-hour hold psychiatric admission. And what did that say to me? What that said to me is she was not at acute risk for self-harm, harm to others. These are the reasons we would do an emergency hold. Suicidal, homicidal, I don't know if I'm allowed to say that on your channel. And then acute psychosis. For instance, if the person is hearing voices, and sometimes patients will have what we call command hallucinations, that they literally hear a voice saying, kill yourself or go do this thing. So that would be a reason for a 72-hour commitment to the psychiatric unit. And mania, when somebody becomes really, really manic and they go on escapades. I've seen this many times, and they're out in the street and they take off their clothes and they're really psychotic, and they get grandiose or they get paranoid. So really none of that, clearly those criteria were not met for her to be admitted to hospital. She was sent home. So right
that's
there,
like a red flag in a sense. Like, I mean, what about like if there was a kidnapper, wouldn't she have been all hysterical and just going through like the billion?
No, not necessarily, because she could have acute post-traumatic stress, stress reaction. People that have been violated, you know what I'm talking about, the R word. I don't want to say it. Yeah. Or they've been robbed or at gunpoint or whatever. You can have an acute post-traumatic stress reaction, and some people will just freeze, and they don't freeze in place, but they get very into themselves, and they don't get hysterical, Jonathan. So the fact that if she did or wasn't hysterical wouldn't bother me either way, because people react to,
Do you think it bothered the police in a sense of knowing that she wasn't held for 72 hours, thinking, well, that's kind of like a red flag. She's normal. Wouldn't under a situation that she just endured for, because remember, her family were saying or to put out a statement a day later and said she suffered so much trauma in a sense. I mean, the fact that she wasn't in a 72-hour hold, it wasn't as bad.
Right.
Yes,
that makes so I can't say what the police, how the police, deal with this, but for me, as an outsider, but as a clinician, what that said to me is exactly it. I'm like, okay, so they didn't hold her. So what? Now I want to hear more. So then they did release the 911 calls, right, or her call, And that to me was extremely revealing because, I know I'm talking about in a minute. I hope that I hope this is interesting to your chat. I don't know.
Oh, it is. We got a lot in the chat. Everyone wants to hear in a psychologist and medical expert field. People want to hear this type of perspective, including myself, because it's all new to me.
So, earlier when we started talking, you and me on this live, we talked about executive functioning, right? And part of executive functioning, guys, there's 6 pieces. It's part of your frontal lobe, and even young children have executive function. And there are sort of 6 parts. I won't get into all of it, but it basically is your ability to plan and execute, therefore executive functioning, certain tasks, certain projects, or whatever. So if somebody is able to plan, research things on a computer, look things up, we can talk about that in a minute, the specific things she did. To me as a clinician, what that said to me was, wow, she appears to have had intact executive functioning. This wasn't just a spur of the moment, acute psychotic break. Some people on a couple of other channels I've listened to said, well, maybe she had, I'm really bad with this, the cannabis, THC gummies. And sometimes people will get these sort of elixirs that are really potent, like 6 times, 8 times more potent than regular this is my dog barking. I may have to go let her out in a minute. Cannabis gummies, and they can literally get like super high to the point where you can get like paranoid or whatever. And so some people on other channels were saying, rumors were going around that she'd taken a gummy and that's what caused all of this, that she was hallucinating this baby and all of this. So for me as a clinician, I said, okay, let's pretend and I've seen that where people get acutely psychotic from drug, heroin, whatever. I've seen alcoholics go through withdrawal 3 days out. They begin to get tremors. They hallucinate. They get bigger than life. Really, it's quite remarkable, and they get paranoid. So I looked at this and said, okay, maybe she ate a gummy. This is what I'm going in my head that night, and then she got hallucinating, and that's why she called 911. But I put that to bed, because I listened to the 911 call and she was so measured. She was calm and extremely measured in the way she was speaking. She appeared to have normal inflection, like we usually say, like, was the person speaking in a regular rate, rhythm, and volume? Were they goal directed? And so from what I could glean from that call, she was speaking a regular rate, rhythm, volume, and she was goal directed. So I didn't, and she was very descriptive in answering their questions. Although there was some hesitation when they asked what did the baby have on their feet. I thought there's a lot to take from that. But my point is, Jonathan, is that for me, as a clinician, saw that she appeared to have intact executive functioning. Then they presented, the pressers presented information vis-a-vis her having done searches on the computer, right? Yeah. Like, how do you steal money from a cash register? What other things?
One-way bus ticket to Nashville, Taken, the movie Taken.
Yeah. I think she also, it was like, do you have to pay money back for an Amber?
Also age limit on an Amber Alert. What's the age limit on an Amber Alert victim?
Can I let my dog out real quick?
All right, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead. So that's Dr. Amy. She's great. Isn't she very insightful? She has a lot of insight. And a lot of the stuff, we're curious about. And, she's talking about the 911 call, about how so calm she was. And that's one red flag that I saw right from the beginning. I mean, she's just basically saying, well, there's a child here. I mean, for me, if it was me and I called 911 and I saw a child, I'd be like, if I legitimately saw a child, I'd be like, oh my God, there's a child. Like, please get here ASAP,
Yeah, there was really no
I'd probably get out of my car while I'm on the phone and grab the child and be like, it's okay, and hold this child to make sure it's okay. Okay.
I totally agree with you. There was no sense of urgency in her voice. So and that's a great point, Jonathan, because I'm looking at the piece of like she was speaking in a regular rate, rhythm, and volume and goal directed. So for me, I was looking at like, is she manic? Is she psychotic? Is she talking jibber jabber? So that's one piece of it. But you point out another outstanding point. There was no sense. So there was no sense of urgency, right? None. So that all of these things, guys, are telling, right? And they show, executive function, premeditation. So I've seen in some live chats, I even saw somebody say, not in a live chat, but a content creator put in capitals, she's insane. And I'm like, I wrote in, no, you cannot. First of all, insanity is a criminal definition. It's not a medical definition. And I do think we need to be really careful when we, how it's very normal. Like we said, oh, she's nuts, or he's nuts, not Carlee, or they're nuts, they're crazy, they're insane. Throwing those kind of words out, can be very dangerous because number one, you don't want to say something about somebody that you really don't know, and that's not very kind. Even if they were psychotic, that's not nice. But number two, I think we need to be careful as little armchair sleuths, we need to be careful about the difference between the legal definition of insanity, which means you were criminally insane per the law at the time of your crime.
I didn't know that.
Yes. And then you have to show, there has to be evidence that is quote unquote clear and convincing evidence that you were not responsible. So in this kind of a case, in general, what would point away from clear and convincing is that the person sounded, in their right mind. But again, I can't speak 100% to her, her state of mind. I can just get glimpses, right? That's what we're given, are glimpses.
Yeah, but who would pick up a phone and pretend there's a toddler on the side of the road?
Okay, so let's go to the next thing. So it's a great question. So first, I just wanted to go on record for folks. Let's be really careful in our community not to use words like they're nuts, they're crazy, or they're insane.
I'm gonna take that advice moving forward. I don't know if I did it in the past, but
I don't know either.
I'm going to be more mindful of using that term on someone. Definitely. Right. So thank you for sharing.
And the word insanity, which there was that Letitia Stauch case. I think you heard about her and the little boy.
Yep.
Gannon. I think she tried to mount an insanity defense. I believe she tried to by saying she had multiple personality. And they played all of these things in the court, all of her interviews, and then they had prosecution and defense psychiatrists, including the psychiatrist for the state that evaluated her and said no, she understood the consequences of what she was doing. So not every state has a criminal insanity defense.
Yeah, they have like guilty but mentally ill. A lot of states have guilty but mentally ill.
Exactly. Yes. The bar, you have to really have a high bar. In the Lori Vallow case, she was the issue around whether you're competent to stand trial or incompetent. She was deemed incompetent to stand trial initially. I don't know if you all remember that, but she was deemed incompetent because they didn't say why. Maybe she was depressed. Who knows? But they felt that she was too psychiatrically fragile at that time of standing trial. That was not a commentary on what her frame of mind or whether she was crime. Yes, exactly. Mm-hmm. And the thing with competency to stand trial, that can change, that can come, that can go. So initially she was remanded to the forensic psychiatric unit. And, over time she improved and she stood trial because they deemed that she was competent. And there was one point during that trial, I can't quite remember, Jonathan, I know you were there, where something happened and she had she got hysterical.
So I was there, so I was in the courtroom, and they were showing the autopsy photos of her 2 children from Chad Daybell's home, and she just, at the court break, she just had a complete meltdown and went hysterical, and her
Right.
lawyer, they actually shut it down. There was
Exactly.
a delay for like 2 hours, and her lawyers actually tried to prohibit her from being in the courtroom for the rest of that day, but the judge denied that. So, they continued it, but yeah, there was,
and I was a little worried, to be honest with you. I just kept crossing my fingers at that point in the whole trial that she wasn't going to have the plug pulled on the trial by saying she's now not competent. She's too fragile. I was like,
I thought that was a possibility. I thought that was the route they were going, but
I thought so too.
They were just trying for that particular day to not have her in the courtroom.
Mm-hmm.
It was interesting, and I think the jurors saw that. I believe. I was in the overflow room at the time, the media overflow room, so I didn't actually see it myself, but sources up there that were telling me what was really going on.
Right. So the point, I guess, is that let's go back to Carlee. So this individual has no, and at the presser they were asked, does she have a history of anything? And the law enforcement said no, she does not. So now I'm going to get you the answer to your question.
Well, just because you don't have a history does that mean anything?
That is totally true. That is completely true. So let's say she has no history. So that would make it less likely that she would maybe have a sudden break with reality. So I'm like, okay, so she doesn't have a history. So I'm looking at that. Then we talked about the drug induced, right? Somebody could get a drug and they can become psychotic and enraged and, what we call a drug fueled violence. Sometimes we see, I'm not talking about her, but that happens. And, that is one of the things I thought about in the Idaho 4. Was this a drug way back? Whoever or whatever group or individual did this, was this drug fueled, including in boys, in the young men? Are they on anabolic steroids for, lifting? That I've seen quite a number of my patients. They can get a drug fueled rage that you cannot imagine. I've never had a patient actually kill anybody or stab, but I have had patients do great damage because of being on steroids, for instance, and they'll break doors, they'll punch walls. I've been hit a few times, it can be really intense.
But in this particular case with Carlee, the fact that she was talking and sound normal, she no mania or no.
Exactly. That's what I'm thinking. Yes. Of course, we're doing impressions here, right?
Yeah.
So I'm sorry to go on and on like this, but my point to you is that all of the big gun, so to speak, diagnoses that could have propelled this behavior look unlikely, especially since she wasn't put on a hold. Okay. So now let's go to your question again, Jonathan. What would have propelled somebody to come up with this elaborate ruse? Yeah. So then we go to the next category of mental illness, we'll call it. Okay. And that category are what we call personality disorders. Now, as I learned in medical school, I mean, there are 3 classes of personality disorders. And as I learned in medical school, we all have what we call a whiff, like a little of a personality, some personality disorder, because we all have a personality, right? Or what we call a trait. We might have a trait. So we use something called the Diagnostic and Statistic Manual number 5 for mental health diagnoses. And if let's say you look up antisocial personality disorder, okay? That's in one class of personality disorders. The person would have to meet many of these criteria and they of course have to be evaluated for them to carry the diagnosis of antisocial personality disorder. However, a person could have a few traits, a few whiffs, and they could be like, I see some of the adolescents that I've seen, especially the boys, they might decide they're going to go steal. They're going to go like, you know, light a fire, but not to hurt, or light a house on fire. But you know, they do these edgy things, right? So they might have some traits of being psychopathic or whatever, but that doesn't mean that they are forever. So I don't like to myself. I stay away from, in my practice, almost always, I stay away from putting I mean, I always generally come up with a diagnosis of what we used to call Axis 1 diagnosis, which could be depression, anxiety, PTSD. I mean, there are lots of them, right? Social anxiety, obsessive compulsive disorder, things that sort of are treatable both with therapy and medication. So I always am able to come up with usually something on that score. But I really try to stay away in my practice and in my written documentation from personality disorders. Why? Because I think when you mark somebody psychopathic, sociopathic, they're narcissist, they're histrionic, which means that they dramatize everything and woo-hoo-hoo, you know, all that kind of stuff. Okay, if I put that down, you know, it's almost like condemning somebody to say you're forever and ever marked with that and you can't get better. And truth is that people make mistakes in their youth. They can have 3 of the 6 or 7 of the 9, whatever criteria met for a personality disorder, and they may do something that causes them to go to jail because they stole money, they embezzled, whatever. That doesn't mean they're forever and ever amen disorder. You see, there is a lot of information that tells us that people do and can and do get better, and they might struggle their whole life with certain aspects of their personality, but they can overcome. And I'm a full believer in overcoming and not sort of pigeonholing somebody and saying, well, 20 years ago, you know, I even say with my patients, if they're like, my parents were rageaholics, they're horrible. I'm like, okay, let's look at that was 20 years ago. Tell me about how they are now. I mean, have they evolved? I mean, you don't want to just keep somebody in the past. So that being said, what I've sort of would come down to with Carlee is that I don't know if she has, I can't comment on a personality disorder or whatever, but I think there are whiffs, let's call it that way. There are whiffs of her, you know, misbehaving, right? And, you know, what kind of people misbehave? You know, there are people that are pathological liars. They could be a narcissist. They could have no sense of remorse. They could a person could feel desperate because they're pregnant, let's say, and they don't want to tell their parents. And it's nothing to do with being a narcissist or a personality disorder. It's out of sheer desperation. My point to you, Jonathan and chat, is that there's this whole category of personality issues. And we also have a separate category in psychiatry that we always assess, which are the social factors that would push somebody to where they're at. And I don't know all of what social factors she might be undergoing. But here's my point. Okay, so now I'm going to give you my final thing.
Yeah.
I think that as a parent and a clinician, if somebody is not acutely psychotic and they're in their right mind, so what we call legally and medically compos mentis, meaning mind, compos meaning competent. So if somebody is compos mentis, regardless of what stressors may have pushed somebody to do something like a manipulative action or a ruse or a hoax, I firmly believe before you get your counseling, which I think should be mandated for people, because especially if the person's not going to get charges legally, right? But I do think a person does need to repay the greater community for their poor behavior. And I'm not a legal person, so I can't say, does she deserve to go to jail? Does she deserve community service? Does she deserve? I can't say. But if it were my child, what I would want is my child to tell the truth. My child to tell the truth and come clean. And as a parent, and I'm sure there are many parents and grandparents here, that noise, Amy, I don't think I'm making any noise. I don't know. I hear that. It's like,
You're right. You cut out just shortly, but you're good.
okay.
No. But here's what I want to ask. Here's what I want to ask here. You kind of explained about the 911 call. We don't know why she did it. But let's go into another phase, right? So, because when I went there and I saw that obviously her car was on the side of 459. It was a little after 9:30 p.m. at night. On the woods there, it was completely pitch black. And I think most of us that are watching and most agree that she probably went into those woods. She probably ventured in the woods, whether she got guided, whether she went by herself, had a flashlight, whatever. I can tell you as a male myself, because I went through the woods myself right there to kind of retrace the possible steps that she took. And I can tell you as a male, going into those woods with a flashlight, I was scared to death. And I wanted to get out of there as soon as possible. So in her mind, being a female, and I don't want to generalize, male.
No, females are definitely, we feel more physically vulnerable. There's no doubt about that. There's no problem.
If she wanted first, the lie about the toddler. Now, for whatever reason, she did that. But now you go into the woods. What do you think she was thinking? Or going into the woods like that?
I can't tell you what she was thinking, but I think that what the police have to do is they have to really look at forensic data and figure out, did she have help? Was there an accomplice? Was there a friend, a boyfriend, a hooker, not hooker upper, like a friend with bennies, whatever, that's what we call it up here, a friend with bennies, somebody that helped her. And that can be, that can be looked at from a forensic data point of view. And then I bring into the fact that I honestly, as a mom and as a clinician, I have been troubled by her mother's posture. Like, I'm saying not physical posture, but her behavioral posture vis-a-vis the daughter, and really putting up like a smoke screen of social media has put us down, and this and this and this and this.
Is that deflection?
Sorry?
Is that a form of deflection? Is that kind of what was done or something?
Yes, it is. So my question is, what you hope for as a parent, number one, is that the child will do their very best, even in the face of, as somebody in the chat said a few minutes ago, the frontal lobe is not totally formed till 25. That is true in women, later in men, and people with ADHD. We do make irrational decisions. We all do. We're human. So when we make our mistake, our hope, and when we raise our children, is that we've shepherded them so that when they do make a mistake, even in if it's a ruse, a hoax, a lie, whatever, a stealing episode, that they will have the courage, and we help them to have the courage to come forward and say, I did make this mistake. And as a parent, I believe that my role is not only to sacrificially give to my children, the best I can with love and, food and a shelter and every opportunity that I can, but really my most important thing is to imbue in them, a sense of right and wrong and values that are going to give them a moral compass. And as a parent, and I've been there, believe me, I have been there, where, my children have done things that I had to turn them in for. Nothing like this, but things that they had to. And I remember on another channel about a year and a half ago, I don't even want to give the example, but my daughter did do something that could have gotten her kicked out of school. And this is when she was in high school. And I went to the we call it headmaster, or the director of the school, And I reported my kid. And I remember my kid practically, she was shaking and she practically, she almost passed out. She was that like scared. But what she had done was to me an infraction, and it had to be, and it broke the school rules because it was a private school, and they were very strict about certain things. And I know that a lot of parents wouldn't do that. And I remember the channel that I was on, and it did cause me to cry a little bit. And then I thought, damn you. The person said to me, you're a terrible mom and you don't love your children because you made your child tell the truth to the headmaster. You're horrible. And of course, I got a little bit upset, just like, oh. And then I said goodbye, and I never went back to the channel because I don't think I'm a horrible parent. So what is the point? The point is that I haven't really seen since this leading up to when Carlee made the statement to the police, I haven't seen any sense of her parents doing anything but, like you're saying, deflecting. And now that she's done that, she has owned her, errors, really egregious errors, quite frankly. I haven't seen the mom utter any sort of contrition like my daughter has admitted that this is something she did. She was wrong and the police have to make a decision. And I haven't heard that. And somebody in the chat a few minutes ago said affluenza, and which is like if you're affluent and rich, you suffer from being having affluenza, and maybe she does. But regardless of our income, I don't know about you all, but I really do think to launch the next generation, we really have to guide and shepherd them. And I don't know if her mother and or her father, Carlee, were complicit. Was there a complicity? Was there planning with them? And even if after the fact she called them, or a kid calls the parent and says, I made this whole thing up and I'm in the woods. If the parent doesn't call the police, then they are an accessory after the fact. And those parents, whatever, they have to be held accountable. Because I think in the end, we're talking about accountability, right?
Yeah.
So here's my thing.
Yeah.
No, sorry, I'm boring everybody.
Prince, if they knew she was lying, I mean, would they co-sign the lie?
Well, that's my point. When I found out what my kid did, which, it's not horrible, but it was enough that it had to be reported. I felt that my lack of action or my omission of action would have made me complicit. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I felt that I had to, but that's just me. I mean, this is just my moral compass, whatever. But yeah.
But as far as Carlee, like moving forward, like would this the after effect damage her more than or damage?
So say that again.
This after effect now of what happened and transpired, like her mom was on national TV a day later or whatever, after she was found or after she came home, saying that she's enduring online, a cyberbullying, more or less.
My question back to the mother would be, why do you have your 25-year-old daughter who was missing or disappeared for whatever reason? Why would she be on social media upon return?
Interesting. Yeah.
That to me is like that's my question. It's not what social media is saying. It's why do you have your child who is supposedly in a vulnerable state, putting herself out there on social media?
Well, she had people, everybody's wondering what she's saying and posting and everything like that. I think her Facebook was taken off recently, but then I think in the last 24 hours, it was put back on. So obviously that was a short hiatus to get on Facebook because they're back.
Right.
Yeah, I think the mother took herself off too, and now both accounts are back on, Facebook accounts.
Yeah, I saw somebody in chat just now. Guys, I'm sorry. I am reading all your comments, but they're going quickly and I'm not good with names. But somebody just said, the mother really seems to behave more like a friend than a mom to the girl. And I mean, we don't know that relationship. And again, that's where the piece in evaluation of somebody, that's where we evaluate the social piece, right? What are the family dynamics? Is there a history of any pathological lying in the parents? Is there drug abuse? There's we haven't even mined that well yet. I mean, and we probably will never be able to mine it. But as a clinician, those are the things that we have to look at. Like, yeah. So the mom is going on national TV. To me, the TV and the internet, I mean, like you probably know, I haven't made a video I purposefully haven't made a video since just after Brian Koberger was arrested, because I felt that things in the legacy media were getting to be just absurd in terms of all these rumors and speculations. And then I felt like people were being cruel to each other in social media. And I was like, I don't want to be part of this right now. So I do find it interesting, and maybe I would say troubling, that the mom and dad were willing to go on Good Morning America, I think it was, the day.
NBC Today.
What was it?
BC Today.
What's that?
The morning show, NBC morning show.
Oh, okay.
Good morning.
Similar. Right. So, for me, like I would have to take my little family, and we would have to go, not into hiding, but we would have to gather around our own hearth, and we would have to really take a hard look at what's going on, both with the child, the adult child, and with me as a parent. And how are we going to rectify this? And if there is something criminal that the person did, how are we going to get a lawyer? And I don't want a lawyer that's going to charm the pants off of people or whatever. I want somebody who's going to defend my child and try to find a way for my child or to make their way through this. And if they need to be charged, how do you do this? And in a case of something like this, from what I can glean, I can't tell you what she should do in terms of, jail, whatever. But I would say, as a clinician, I believe if she hasn't had a complete psychiatric evaluation, like really complete with testing and all that, she does need to have that. And she needs individual evaluation in psychotherapy, and she needs family evaluation. And sorry.
No, I don't mean to cut you off. I have so many questions. Like, I'm just wondering, like, if will we hear from her again of something else, like bizarre and crazy?
Right.
Well, I put the word crazy. You see what I'm saying? Like, I gotta.
Yes, right. That. I would say unhinged, or yeah. I think somebody in your chat about 20 minutes ago.
For instance, let me just give you an example. While police like originally detectives just went and spoke to her, and she came up with a orange hair guy, bald head, truck, fed Cheez-Its, and played with hair and everything like that. And she refused to speak to investigators after that. They only spoke to her briefly. Well, last weekend, she's having a party at her house.
Oh, no.
Like,
this is extreme. I totally agree with you. I totally agree with you, Jonathan. And it's troubling. It's very troubling. But what does that say to me? Like, the last thing my kid would be having is a party if they pulled a stunt like that. There's no freaking way.
Yeah.
I would shut down the party, the celebrations. If you get an allowance, which she's too old for, there have to be consequences. A party? So you're absolutely right, Jonathan. It's like, okay, we've seen this person, and we've seen a slice of this person in time. What you hope is that there's a sense of, oh my goodness, and remorse, and like, I need to pull myself together. But what instead you're seeing is just kind of Shangri-La, hee hee ha ha, I'm going to have a party. That speaks volumes about the person's
priorities.
Priorities, way in the world. Yeah.
Think, man. You're supposed to cooperate with investigators, and the world is watching. You're under the microscope. The whole nation is looking down on Hoover, and trying to find out what actually happened to you and where you were at for the last 49 hours. And you're going to just have a birthday party and a bunch of people come over.
Yes, I mean, I'm trying to bite my tongue because I don't want to sound really judgmental. I can just tell you, it is troubling to me that after this episode, this ruse, that then there was an unfolding of parties and whatever. It is troubling, and it speaks to, again, what's going on with this person and what is going on with the family dynamic.
That's all I was going to say. The whole family in general.
Yes, and a sense of consequence. So let's go to if I were, let's pretend she ends up getting charges, or a person that's done something like this gets charges. I personally would, if I were the prosecution and the defense attorney, either or, I would, regardless of whether there's jail time and community service, which is usually BS anyway, I hate to say it, but there's really, usually with community service hours, it's not substantive in my experience. It's like, come on, are you kidding me? But sometimes when my patients are placed in community service, they go to something that can be life-changing for them. So
What?
Sorry?
Like what?
Yes. Okay, so I'll give you an example. So like something substantive that my patients have found like, whoa, has been to go to work with the homeless, like in a homeless either shelter or, and not just like serving soup, but really like rolling their sleeves up and, going down to where the homeless encampments are and working with somebody that has that as their job, and then where they really get to see the other side of life, and they get to not only make hopefully a positive impact on those folks, but those folks can also teach that individual something, right?
Yeah.
And that's what you want, something substantive and life-changing. And did I already say that I would mandate counseling? I mean, this person has
that, but you would mandate it.
Yes, I would. Absolutely.
You think would be appropriate?
You're good. You're good, man.
Wow.
I would say she'd have to be in counseling once a week, at least once a week, for at least 12 months, if not 24 months.
Okay. What, like 2-hour sessions? Hour session?
Hour session at least once a week. Yep. Yeah.
Do you think for her mentally, or again, I don't want to say go in her mind or whatever, but do you think it'd be good for her to come out and, to a microphone or come out in public and just, share what she did and why? And would that help her maybe move
You would
on?
hope. Somebody just wrote in your chat, like, is this like, are there whiffs of narcissism? Yes, I would say there are, but whiffs, like, no diagnosis, but maybe some whiffs. And the problem is empathy and remorse. Remorse, I feel really bad about it.
You see, I can't, when I followed this case,
right,
the evidence that I saw was hundreds of law enforcement on that side of the road looking for her. I mean, when I heard it happen myself, living in Florida, I made some videos with flyers trying my best to bring awareness to the situation. I've seen people from all across the world, all walks of life, generally concerned and wanting to find this individual, thinking it's legit.
Right. And can you imagine if somebody gotten killed?
And going on the highway, these officers going along the interstate, in the elements, wildlife, choppers in the air. God forbid if a chopper crashed.
I totally agree with you. I mean, this is huge. You're absolutely right. And you're dealing, just in terms of the finances, although we don't owe back money when people come to search for us, but you're talking millions of dollars. I mean, they had like the not the Secret Service. I don't know. They had like the FBI and some other, I forget, what was it?
Service part of this.
What was it?
Did have Secret Service part of this.
I don't know why they had Secret Service. I don't know.
Maybe Congress or, they have a unit. I looked, they had a unit in Hoover Police Departments is the Secret's digital forensic unit, maybe that deals with that. Okay. Presidential stuff and counterfeit money.
Yes, yes. No, you've had a couple of really nice super chats with comments, and I'm
see that.
Yes,
so I
think maybe go back to that, because somebody just made a really wonderful comment about consequence should be taking, not allowing a young person like that to be on social media for a certain amount of time. I think the person said forever. I don't think that's going to work, but I totally agree. Social media makes these young people especially think that, they don't get what reality is. Here we go. Dr. Nikki. Hi.
Yeah, I'm reading the comments as we go too. I actually got the screen. I wasn't reading earlier, but
I'm sorry to interrupt you.
no.
Yes, Dr. Nikki is correct, I think. I don't know if permanently, but I totally agree. Social media is all consuming, and I even find like I can go down the rabbit hole on the true crime for hours at a time, and I'm like, stop it, get up and go swimming or whatever, go in the garden. But for young people, it's like their lifeline, you know. And
Yeah,
even the way they pose and show, and the filters they use, and a lot of the young people hypersexualize themselves, and they're just posing, and it's just a whole nother realm, and that so much of it is false. You know, it's like not real, right?
yeah. It's just it's sad, and I think all of us are in agreement. We hope that she learns her lesson. We hope that she takes accountability and acknowledges the damage that she's done to the community. I don't want her life to be ruined personally. I just hope that she gets her life in order, whether it's her and her family, and learns from this. A lot of my viewers know, I made mistakes in my past, and I worked around the issues that I had, and I'm still, working on them, but I'm trying my best to be a better person,
Yes.
not make the same mistakes I've made in the past. And she's still young. She's 25, and the individual that just posted, maybe stay off social media.
Right. I mean,
Work with the homeless, or do some community service.
somebody
That
else said a couple of people have said in your chat to work on the side, picking up litter on the side of the highway. I totally agree with that. Not only is that substantive, but would be a concrete reminder at the level of risk that the officers and searchers took
on the side of the road. Matter of fact, when I was just there a couple of days ago, my last day there, the day after the police press conference a few days ago, right at that spot where a car was, there was people in yellow shirts picking up trash along the road, like that. These officers, and you still have to, they put themselves at risk even doing that, because you kind of want to get into the fast lane to get away from them. And when you have officers all along the side of the road there, it's a dangerous situation, and she got to realize that.
I know, and the problem is, Jonathan, that if somebody's out partying a week later, that really doesn't bode well for her sense of remorse, and it is concerning to me. One thing I wanted to talk to, I just love your chat tonight, by the way. Just a lot of really important comments and reflections. Somebody did say to me, or not me, you and me, earlier, like probably now a half an hour ago, so is the word cray cray, is that off limits? Here's my thing. In my real life, you can use whatever words you want in your house or whatever. But if we are on social media, right, and Jonathan, let's say, or I, or whomever, is talking about a case, I don't think we should say the person's nuts or they're cray cray. I just don't think that advances the narrative for that individual, and I don't think it advances our credibility as content creators. What do you think?
Yeah, well, again, I think I'm guilty of using those words and saying somebody's like that, and I think I made that mistake just earlier.
Yes, it's a habit.
Be worked on, work on and be mindful of I'm not in no position to diagnose anyone and call them that, because I don't know their state of mind at the time, whatever.
Right.
I guess that's just the thing that people do.
I think here's some words that sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, and I still, for me, it's like I'm still curious about where she was for those 49 hours.
Oh, I'm curious too.
For me, like, I feel like she was outside in the elements, and then my mind goes, would any, like, again, I'm saying a female, would a female want to be out, be able to be outdoors for
I just don't think so. I'll tell you why, because I went to Duke, as you know, you mentioned, and I went to South Carolina. I lived there for 8 years in college in North Carolina. So 12 years in the South, and she's in Alabama. It is so damn hot, so hot and humid at this time of year, and the bugs and potential. I was an outdoorsy girl and camped a lot and hiked. I wouldn't be able to tolerate that at 25. You see, I don't think she was in the woods. I just don't.
Yeah. It'll be fascinating if she gets arrested, to get this information. I'm sure if she gets arrested, it'll be in the affidavit of probable cause.
Yes, I think
details of where they're at. But the way I heard the press conference the other day with the police chief, I don't even think they really actually know.
I don't think they know. They don't
know. We don't know who else was involved.
I know. And ultimately, we as subs, members, creators, whatever, we really don't have a right. The public doesn't have any right to the information. I mean, it's morbid curiosity. But I like to think that if we get information like this, that gives us a chance to kind of reflect upon our own behaviors, our children's behaviors, et cetera, and how do we decrease our risk from either becoming a victim of something or becoming, a suspect. How can we change our behaviors? One
thing that's interesting, and I don't know if this is related or not, but I just read a report earlier today. A 11-year-old girl in Florida just got arrested for kind of doing the same thing, in a sense of calling authorities and creating false kidnapping hoax. And she said she got it from YouTube, a part of a YouTube game. And I haven't found the game itself, but it makes me wonder,
I think that's the TikTok challenge.
Really?
There are a lot of these really, really bizarre and dangerous TikTok challenges. I don't even want to mention some of them that I've seen, where these kids will do something that literally they die. So, and again, this goes back to Dr. I didn't catch her name, something, PhD. I don't remember. Nikki or something. I don't remember. A few minutes ago, but she's right. I mean, the social media is, it's dastardly. I think it's really dastardly. And we really don't control it enough, I think, especially, I have patients, I'm shocked, but I see kids at age 5, 6, and 7, the parents already give them an iPhone. I'm like, what? Are you freaking kidding me? I don't get it. I wanted to talk.
Carlee herself, she had a Mercedes. I guess that was her Mercedes. Her parents got her. Obviously, there's an attorney representing her now, Emory Anthony. He ran for mayor twice in Birmingham.
Yes.
I don't think he's cheap. Carlee, just having a job at the time, she don't even have a job anymore. Woodhouse Spa. I'm sure she didn't save money to get this lawyer. So her parents seem like they've been bailing her out and never giving her everything she wants all her life.
I agree with you. That's where we get into the affluenza thing. The B family just said something on your chat that I thought was very interesting. B family, what did they just say now? They said they think maybe the parents actually picked her up.
Interesting. We've heard that.
We don't know. But I wanted to mention two other things that I thought, somebody just said speculation station. Facts at speculation station. Yeah, we are speculating though tonight. We really are, but we need to be careful. But we also need to reflect upon her actions and our own actions and decide how can we understand these things better. What I'm going to tell you is that I think you asked me a few minutes ago about what consequence or how will her future be impacted. Now, I think that I can speak as a physician, and I have a daughter that is in nursing school, and oh my God, I'm constantly saying, don't drink and drive, don't get a misdemeanor, don't get a felony, you'll never get your nursing license. I mean, boom, it could destroy your career. My child when she enrolled in nursing school, she's really trying to walk the tightrope because you have to. I mean, because there's, it's so strict these days, and not only the questions that, first of all, I don't know if she would ever be able, after this whole thing, the way it's blown up, unless she comes clean, gets counseling, and has great contrition. And part of her contrition is exactly what you said a few minutes ago, coming clean to the public and saying, listen, I did this thing, 1, 2, 3, 4. I learned, it's just, I was under whatever. I think from my experience of 30 years, I think it would be very difficult. She may have kissed goodbye any hope for a nursing career. And then somebody else in the chat
They-
earlier said,
if they
"Ooh,
just they'll
I'm
just
sorry?
think liability, like they want to.
No, first of all, okay, let me just finish the one sentence. So let's pretend she could get her license after this thing. The next question is, would you want that person to take care of you? Would you trust that person to not, because we make such decisions all the time. And like I've told my employees in the past, in the family medicine practices that I've done, if you make a mistake, if you give the wrong vaccine, if something happens, come to me, tell me the truth, and I will explain an error to the patient. The buck stops with me. But if you lie to me, done. And I can tell you, we have where I was working for 8 years, we had certified medical assistants. Some of them got fired for lying about something or doctoring something in the chart. 1, 2, 3, done. And then they have to be reported to the medical assistant's licensure, and you can lose. Sorry. So I'm not even talking for a nurse or a doctor. At every level, I know where I worked for 8 years. It was federally funded clinic, but like you can't even get I knew this girl. She was a medical assistant. She got like 3 tickets for speeding and quite over the speed limit. Every time anybody got a speed ticket, they had to report it to HR. Strict place, man. And she ultimately was dismissed because she had 3 and she had that on her license. They said, you're too high risk because we need for you to drive between clinics in a rural area, and we need somebody who's trustworthy. You'll have to leave.
And another thing with Carlee is, their job, Woodhouse Spa has said that she stole toilet paper and a robe from her employment. So it's not even just the hoax itself, but
there are other behaviors
from her own job.
Exacto. So there are other behaviors. So the other thing I wanted to tell you something about, and then like as a physician, every 2 years, I have to renew my different licenses, like my drug DEA license for controls and in 2 states, plus the feds, plus, my license to practice in 2 states right now. Every single freaking time I have to take something, I have to say whether I've been arrested, whether my privilege. I mean, it's like they scrutinize you, and then if let's pretend I had been arrested 2 months ago. The next time I go to renew my license, I have to come clean on that, and then they'll decide. Oh, you got arrested. I don't even want to say it because then it will end up in some sort of a cliff here. But,
moral turpitude. What is that word?
Turpitude.
Yeah. They I think in reference to getting licensing or anything like that. It's a character.
It is, and so it's tough. Now at the same time, I've had colleagues this is going back many years ago, who were impaired. Okay, they had like a Vicodin problem or a drinking, and they had to come clean. They had to tell, like, this is when I was in training actually, and so that part of their thing is they had to come clean to our whole group that they had their license suspended for a certain amount of time. They had to go into AA or NA. I mean, they had to take these steps. So nothing is permanent in life. She may be able to get her license or whatever, but this is serious stuff, man. And like you're saying, exactly, like she took the bathrobe and the toilet paper. But listen, so I want to say one other thing that in some ways I've told, I don't know if I've told you this, but I have written this about you before. And I think that this conversation, I'm going to bring it in some ways full circle because you're so open about, you yourself have made some pretty significant mistakes. And I think you were incarcerated at some point in your past. And then you have matured and you have struggled and you've done your challenges. And I think you're a person of faith. I see you wear your cross. I don't know. But, there is a concept, guys. I don't know if you've ever heard of this yourself, JLR, called restorative justice. Has anybody familiar with restorative justice? But basically, even if somebody goes to jail or whatever, part of the new way, this has been going on probably for 15 at least years, but I really believe in restorative justice, and it doesn't have to even be in the face of a criminal act, But restorative justice has to do with the person who offends has to examine the harmful impact of their action, and then they have to determine what can be done to repair that harm. So the person still has to be held accountable. But with restorative justice, it's not just, and this comes to what you were saying about her coming clean to the public. That would be a perfect example. So part of restorative justice would be that she has harmed the public by this hoax, number one, because she put lots of people at risk. Number two, in the African-American community, there's been a big uproar on several channels that feel like, since minorities often don't get the same kind of attention for being lost, missing, whatever, that Caucasian people do, and she got so much attention, and would that you should if you've really been kidnapped, right? And there's a toddler on the side of it, but that whole narrative has impacted, her community, right? Not only the Hoover, Alabama community, but the larger African American community. And how does that impact other people of color if they go missing? Are the police going to go, no, we're not doing this again? But of course, the police are going to not do that. But they're going to go out and help the person. But there's impact on so many aspects.
Another Carlee Russell. That's how they'll probably.
Exacto. Yes. So going back to your thing, for me, restorative justice in this picture, what it would look like for me, would be let her get her legal thing together, mandate the counseling, and then the restorative justice piece would be precisely what you've just said, which is to examine the impact that she has of her actions, and to do something to repair. So in this case, what the restorative justice action would be, the way I would say it, is exactly what you said. Come out, maybe be interviewed by social media, and it's not like I will only say, but really come out and be authentic and say, this is what was going on with me. And that's part of her payback to our society. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, because she can, try to, that, hey, to the younger generation or age or younger, do not make the same mistakes I've made. Like there's consequences to that.
Yes. And I've always said about you, what I've said about you is
everybody.
I'm sorry.
Or not only that, but there's human trafficking is an issue.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah.
Victims out there. Also the community not only community thought there was an abductor on the loose, man. And some of the people around there I talked to were like scared to go out. Like their own families were worried about their own children, and they think someone's on the loose there, and you have to look over your back, and it has huge effects.
Huge effects on many layers of the community and of our nation, really. But I wanted to circle back prior to my finishing my long talks here, is that I've said about you and other creators that I know quite well, who may have had something in their own past. I have said, to me anyway, you are an example of somebody who lives out your restorative justice commitment, even in your channel. Even if you never said anything about things that you struggled with or your past incarceration, but your commitment to really trying to, like, quote, quote, leave no stone unturned, and hitting the pavement, and all of that, to me, is you, this is just my opinion, but you living out your intentionality at restorative justice. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Absolutely. Yes. I appreciate that. I just feel like, reporting on tragedies and bad things that happen is kind of like giving back. It's like a selfless act.
It is, but I think it's more impactful from you than it would be from somebody who's got the coat and the tie on, and they've been in administrative, whatever, legacy media or law enforcement, whatever, forever, because you're giving back. This is my experience anyway, is very organic. And while we don't always agree on everything, we don't have to. The core of who you are and the work that you're doing, I find to be very admirable.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you, Dr. Amy. Well, we had a great conversation tonight.
I hope I didn't talk too much.
Great. Again, just trying to figure out what happened here. I wanted to get, you're in the medical field, the mental health field, and my mind's just wondering like what was going on in her mind. We'll probably never really know, but it's good to talk about. This case. We still don't know. It's still a mystery. I do think charges are going to be brought on her. I'm hearing possibly misdemeanor charges, and then there's an argument of how much time she should get. I'm not in favor personally of her doing years in prison for this or prison time, but I do think maybe a 30-day jail sentence would be appropriate. Scares kind of like scared straight.
Yes, yes. So how do you think, as somebody who's experienced that? The big house, so to speak. She might have to just go to the little house, but how do you think even 30 days would help somebody like that?
Considering her upbringing, the pictures that I've seen, and the her lifestyle, and her travel, and looking glamour and happy and that sort of deal, I think it would humble her. I really do. I hope it would. You should be in solitary confinement. I don't think she'd be in the general population, probably on her choosing, and maybe just the fact that people are outraged around there.
Right.
A lot of people within her own community,
right.
They'd probably put her in there for her safety. But I want to hope that she sees there's consequences to this, and learn from it, and read the Bible, get religious, read some positive things, and
right.
self-reflect.
Yes, and hopefully have some sort of a transformation. Maybe no Cheez-Its.
Incarcerated too, and see their the mistakes that they made, and say, hey, I don't want to be in their shoes, and I don't want to be like them.
Yeah. No Cheez-Its, go on a Cheez-It fast, and all the other things that she self-indulged with while she was gone, right? So I think this has been really, really good.
People want to follow your channel. Where do they go? How do they find
they have to go to, so my name is, so my name, right? It's up there. But my channel is called Doctora, it's Draw in English, Draw Latina, or Doctora Latina. And I'm Spanish speaking, and I'm Spanish and Italian, and we grew up in the Latin culture, and all my patients call me Doctora they don't call me Doctora Latina, they call me Doctora Salerno, but I go by Draw Latina or Doctora Latina. And that's how they can look me up. Make sure they have to put the period to find me.
And I'll put the channel in the link. I appreciate you, and thank you.
Maybe I'll have you on sometime.
Absolutely, I would love to. It'd be an honor. And then maybe down the future, if there's more situations going on, we'll chat again. We'll chit chat and have a great conversation.
That would be wonderful. It's so wonderful to talk to you. I usually we chat via telephone or text, but it's nice to actually feel like I'm looking at you and talking to you.
I appreciate it. Thank you. You too.
God bless.
Good night.
Okay. God bless. Bye, folks. Thank you so much for allowing me to come on.
Bye, Doc.
Shall I click out?
You can click. I'm going to sign off here. I'm going to just talk for a minute, but you can click.
I'm going to go into your chat channel.
Okay.
Bye, guys.
All right. So that's Dr. Amy. She's a friend. Hopefully you got something out of, we're just trying to, cover this case. And, I thought it was interesting to, get a doctor perspective. I reached out to a lawyer to try to get a lawyer perspective on, about criminal charges and civil charges. And maybe I'll have a lawyer come on. I have a couple friends that are lawyers, and pick their brain just like I picked Dr. Amy's brain. But I appreciate all of you. Thanks for watching JLR Investigates. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, subscribe, hit the notification button, and check out my Carlee Russell playlist. I don't know how long this case is, going on, but as a lot of you know, I cover a lot of cases, true crime, missing people. A lot of times I like getting out of my home and getting to the scene to be boots on the ground, to give you guys a boots on the ground perspective. Fortunately, this country, there's a lot of tragedies and bad things that go on and stuff, and just trying to bring public awareness and trying to make a difference. So thank you all. I appreciate all of you. I will sign off and I will read the comments. So keep them coming and let me know what you think, and let me know how you thought this session was tonight. We will talk soon. JLR Investigates. Thanks, everyone. Good night, and be safe and love your loved ones. Have a good night.